What we're looking at today is a couple stereos out of a 2002 Audi A4, and this is the B6 model. The B7 models are very similar. Basically what we're doing is I took the stereo out of my car in order to replace the LCD screen. This is a unit that had a good LCD screen, and I was just going to swap the whole faceplate over, but once I got this out of my part storage, this one's basically out of a junkyard car, I noticed that the buttons weren't in super great condition. There's a little bit of wear sort of everywhere on the face of this stereo, so I wanted to swap just the LCD screen. Now obviously this one's all apart, this one isn't apart yet, so we're going to have a look at how to take this apart so that you guys can swap just the LCD screen and keep whichever faceplate has the better buttons. In this case it's this one here, and then I can put that all onto the stereo that I know works and I know that I have the stereo code for, so that I can throw that in the car. Now first I'm going to move this guy just out of the way for right now, and then we'll have a look at taking this one apart. So you may have seen this on some other videos if you've been looking around and trying to figure out how to change your LCD plate, because a lot of people just take this whole faceplate off and then swap it out for another one. Now if you're trying to save money on keeping your factory stereo here and you don't want to upgrade quite yet, it is possible to keep everything looking good and to find a faceplate that has some decent buttons and doesn't have too much wear at the junkyard, probably for pretty cheap. But if you try and get out of there with the whole stereo, you'll probably end up paying quite a bit more money than you need to when all you want is just this part. If your stereo is working okay and you have the security code for it, obviously junkyard stereos you're probably not going to get the security code for unless you're lucky enough to find a card that has the code on it. So chances are you want to keep your original radio and just replace that faceplate. But like in my case, you know, I've got the LCD screen from my other radio that's burnt out, some pixels missing, and I just want to swap this faceplate over so that I have swap the LCD screen over rather, so I have a good LCD screen, but don't want to take these sort of poor quality buttons with it. So what we do here, first we start off by taking these 4 screws out of the sides of the faceplate here. One of them's already missing. So with those 4 screws out, it's easy enough to pop that whole faceplate off. The one thing you want to watch out for is you don't want to just yank it off, because it is held in. So along each edge of the stereo here, or of the faceplate, you've got these little locking tabs that are holding the stereo together, or holding that faceplate on. So as you take that faceplate off, you kind of just want to work your way around, make sure that you've got this faceplate's obviously been off this stereo before because some of the tabs are broken, but you want to just work it off and make sure that all those little locking tabs are released as you go. Most of these are broken already. Just another reason why I want to keep the faceplate that I have already that's got the better buttons, because it's not all busted up. Really all I want from this stereo is this LCD screen. So this guy we can get rid of. Now ideally, like I say, if you're in the junkyard and you're looking for stereos, you can remove this faceplate while you're in the junkyard and only pay for this. Even take the faceplate off if that's all you need, or take just the LCD out if that's all you need. Save yourself a bit of money there. So now that we have this apart, basically that whole face here, all of the controls for the buttons, everything's on this circuit board. So there's a set of these little gold screws around the edge of the stereo, or around the edge of the faceplate here, so you can see those. I'm just going to remove all of those, and that whole assembly should come apart. Now one thing you do have to do before you do that is just remove your volume and tuner buttons here from the face. Now that those are off, these guys will just push right through with the LCD screen as soon as I've got those screws undone. So I've got all those screws out. This one here didn't want to come out, so I suspect that the little tab that it mounts into on the other side is broken. Once all those are all done, I'm just pushing on the where you'd have your volume and your tuner buttons here. Just pushing on that to get that circuit board away from the plastic. And that just comes right apart. just like that. So I'm going to set that aside. And this is the faceplate that I'm not going to keep. Now here's the one out of the radio that was in the car. It's in a little bit better condition, like I said. So we're going to go ahead and put that circuit board on this guy. Now that one screw that didn't come out, you can see here's the plastic tab that's left over that had broken off of the back of the plastic piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and unscrew this now that I can hold that steady so that that doesn't end up in the new faceplate. So now I have this, I can go ahead and just drop that right into that faceplate, being careful to make sure that everything's lined up properly, and then put my screws right back in. So there we go, that's all back together. I've left a couple of screws out because these were actually, had that little piece of black plastic broken already. So you can see on the other faceplate, I've got right there and right there, a couple pieces of plastic where they snapped off, probably from the screws being over tightened or something like that, or just from age and use and abuse. So we can get rid of that guy. That one has a bad LCD screen, and we can just install this LCD screen and faceplate back on my original radio so that I can install it back into the car. So just making sure that these little communications bars or whatever line up. So I'm going to drop that back onto the stereo, make sure everything's lined up, and make sure that my tabs are all going to lock in properly. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my 4 screws back in the side of these, of the faceplate here to hold that all on. Then the last thing I'm going to do is just pick which of my volume buttons are in better shape here. And I think what I'll end up doing is, so both of these were the volume buttons. I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm going to keep these 2 buttons, which were both originally the tuner buttons, but because they get less use and have a little bit less wear and tear on them, I'm just going to pop those guys on. So there is a little step just inside the button here. You can see it lines up with the little flat spot on here. So you just have to make sure that you get that orientation right, and your button will slide right on into position. Now all that's left is to connect to my radio and make sure everything's working properly. And now that everything's hooked up, we can check the stereo out, make sure everything's working properly. You can see my screen lights up properly, no dead pixels, and all my controls work nice. So there you go. It's an easy way to save a little bit of money if you're going through the junkyard and you want to replace your faceplate that has worn off buttons, or if you want to replace your LCD screen. You can do either or both, and now you know how. Now that I know that everything's working properly, I'm just going to go ahead and set that stereo in so that it locks into place. Now I know I didn't show the removal of the stereo, so I'll show that now just because it can be a little bit tricky. So you want to take your stereo removal tools. Really comes down to just getting used to it. Once you've taken a lot of them out, they get a little bit easier. You want to make sure that the long part of the key is facing the outside. Slide those in and you can feel them lock into place. You can hear that click. So you just want to make sure that they're all in properly. And like I say, the more of these that you do, the more you'll get used to the feel and knowing that it is in properly or not. This one's a little bit tricky. So that one doesn't seem to want to lock in nice, but we'll give that a try. Now this part can be easier if you have two people to do it. And the other thing that you can do, if you have a difficult time getting it out like I am right now, an easy way to do that is to remove this knee bolster. It's just a couple of bolts. You can pull that bolster down, and then you can actually slip your hand in behind that stereo and push it out from the back, and it makes it a lot easier. That way you can kind of put a little bit of pressure on it and fiddle with the keys until you feel it unlock, and then it'll pop out. It's a lot easier to do.